What's up, everybody? This is Big Mike over at FoodsAlerts.com. It is July 4th. Happy birthday, America. I wanted to do a quick video lesson for you guys going over my trades for last week. I made roughly $5,000 last week in probably about 5 to 10 hours of work. As a trader, I'm not sitting behind the computer all day. Typically, we like to capitalize on the first 2 to 3 hours of trade, be done by noonish and be able to take advantage of the day and do whatever you want. For those of you who are relatively newer to us at Foods Alerts or have yet to begin trading, we're running a 50% off flash sale for July 4th. We typically have never run a sale like this before, but the market's been hot lately. Any of you guys that watch, CNBC, Bloomberg, you turn it on now and then. If you watch the headlines lately, these media outlets can really scare you away from the market. The market lately has been hot, both to the downside and to the upside. So as traders, we like to take advantage of this volatility and play the upside or downside. We don't really care which way the market goes. We want to make money, within a very short period of time and take advantage of that volatility. So, looking at the chart you guys see now, this is the Dow Jones. This is a pretty hot chart right now. We could definitely push out to highs, or we can possibly retest our resistance up here at 18,000 and move back down to lows. As traders, we like to look at things objectively. So I don't really care which way the market goes. I'm looking to play it where the probability works best in my favor. So I wanted to go over two trades in particular that were the bulk of my gains last week. Like I said, I made roughly $5,000. I was up about $3,000 almost by Tuesday, and little by little towards the end of the week, made almost $5,000 in very small amount of time of work, guys. So I wanted to go over the first trade, which was FCFC. So if you look at the daily chart over here, this is a stock that basically had a major move to the downside over the past year. Was trading at about $7 and has since then gone all the way down to about under $1. So this is a typical stock we like to look for where, it's been beaten up, there's a long downtrend, and you're basically looking for the stock to make a move to the upside. So basically, we had this on the watch list back on this day right here, where you see this major volume spike. About 2 million shares came in on this stock. So we had this on the watch list, for that day. Now, basically looking at this for a potential breakout, we like to look what's called for F patterns. These are stocks that form up triangle patterns and make explosive moves to the upside. So basically looking at FCFC, we were looking at this stock, on this day, it basically made a move from about 91 cents all the way to 106, about a 15 to 20% move, so a pretty significant move. And at $1 tends to be a huge psychological support or resistance level. So looking at the intraday chart over here, guys, this is the 15-minute. So basically on the 24th, 25th is when we had this breakout. So just going to break down the time frame to about a 2-minute chart for you. But basically, guys, if you want to look at the intraday chart from the 27th, we basically had this stock make a major breakout over 1. So we had this nice F pattern. Stock broke out basically on the 27th. You saw a nice flag pattern basically break out right here. And this thing ripped all the way up to about $1.50, where it found a little bit of resistance. As I said, $1 is a huge resistance or support level. And typically, if a stock goes to 150 to $2, I like to use 150 as a huge resistance level because it's about a 50% move from $1. So when FCFC made this major move to the upside, unfortunately, I was not able to play it on the long side. I missed this F1 and this rip up. So typically, guys, in the FOO system, we teach you how to go long. However, anytime a stock makes a 50 to 100% move, personally, I like to look for a short. If I see a stock in a day or two that's up 50 to 100%, you can almost guarantee the stock's going to pull back at least 10 to 15% once it finds some form of resistance. So on FCFC, this thing had a nice double top where we found resistance at 158. Had a nice double top, again, right at around 153. Never got as high as the previous resistance point, which is a pretty bearish indicator. So I had gotten short this stock, 8,000 shares at about $1.50. Not a major position, 10, 12,000 bucks. Held this overnight on this day. So basically just to draw a nice pattern for you guys, this is a stock that basically had a bear flag to the downside. Now, bear flag is one of my favorite patterns to look for on a short. This can look like an ascending triangle, but once we had this failed resistance, you have the breakdown under the 13 EMA. I had 8,000 shares at 150. I had held this overnight for a day. And if you look at the following day, this thing crashed all the way down to 116. I covered 125 area, made about 3 grand, guys, in one day. So I was watching the stock only for a couple hours, had my shares. I had my stop at about 155, which was high a day. So I was risking $400 to possibly make $2,000 to $3,000. So as traders, this risk reward is what we look for. I only like to trade stocks with at least a 3-to-1 risk level. FCSC fit that criteria, and I was able to nail it for about $3,000 within a day. So in this thing, once it started to dry out, if the volume started to dry up, I took my profits and moved on. At Foose Alerts, we typically like to follow stocks that have momentum. Once this momentum starts to dry up, you see the volume start to dry up, we like to take our profits and move on to stocks that are moving with a little bit more momentum. So this was a great trade for me this past week. And the next one I wanted to go over as well was THLD. This is a stock that is basically, penny stock, was once trading at about $5, had a major move to the downside, has basically been consolidating between 25 and 50 cents. Now, typically we don't like to trade stocks like this, guys. Stocks under 50 cents, is kind of like my limit. They're usually piece of crap companies. They're there for a reason. However, anytime a stock like this rips from about 30 cents all the way to 70, I'm looking for a short. On the daily chart, this is a hot long-term breakout. There's a lot of resistance at about 76 cents. So going into next week, this will definitely be on the watch list. If we see a breakout over 76, I would not be surprised to see this thing have a mag towards 1. However, from an intraday and day trading standpoint, I was looking at this for a short. Foose and I, once we saw this first rip and we had this second day rip all the way up to resistance at 75, I was basically looking to short this. So I basically, let me just make this chart a little bit easier for you guys. Go all the way back to this breakout. So basically, the 28th to the 30th is when we had this nice F pattern breakout, guys. Just to draw it out for you, just because I'm going back a little bit in time. So you had this long consolidation right here. We had this resistance created at about 53 cents, which was on the 28th. So this stock ended up coming back down, ripping over resistance from about 53 cents all the way to 76. Now, on the 29th, I actually played this to the long side as well. I can just go back this far. Fortunately, TC2000 won't let me go back this far. But basically, once we had this F1 breakout on the 29th, I had gotten long about 10,000 shares at about 64 cents. We saw this immediate rip up to about 75. I actually sold at 70, made about $600. Nothing crazy because I was actually looking at this more for a short. Now, once we see this major resistance, guys, at about 76 cents, once again, looking at the daily chart, this is resistance. This is the resistance on this huge gap to $4. So going in short, I went short about 10,000 shares at 73 cents. Had my stop at about 80 cents. I'm risking about $700 to possibly make a grand or two. Once again, good risk reward on my part. And with this thing, I got in short. Then you see the major move to the downside from about 76 all the way down to about 56. Now, even though these are considered penny stock, guys, stock going from 76 to 56 is basically a 40 to 50% move to the downside. So when you're trading 10 or 20,000 shares, that's $4,000 to $5,000 in profits. So I'd short this. Like I said, small position, 10,000 at 73. Ended up covering multiple times on this downtrend, and the 13 EMA ended up making roughly $600. So made $1,200 on this trade within about 2 hours of time going long and short. Once again, this was on about, I believe the 29th was on a Wednesday. So just to give you guys an example, I was up close to $4,000 by Wednesday of this week, and that's still the rest of the week to be traded. So, THLD, this is a great long and short. These are the types of plays we like to look for, guys. I want to show you examples of the Foose system, how we utilize it both to the long side and to the downside, where you can follow, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 4 stocks a week, trade them, make some money, and move on. If I can make $5 grand a week working 5 to 10 hours, that's why I love my job. The freedom in day trading beats everything about a 9 to 5. So I hope you guys can see what is possible utilizing this system. I was able to buy a brand new Rolex Datejust this past week. Going into next week, I'm looking forward to making some big trades. So take advantage of this 50% off sale. We've never offered this before. since Foose Alerts has been established. We want to show you guys this market's hot. I'm here to help you learn. We have a 20-hour boot camp that's also an extension off the DVDs that you can take once you go through the DVDs if you want to become a full-time active trader. I'm going to basically teach you my system that's an advance to the Foose system, and more importantly, teach you how to short stocks. So we want to show you guys that the market is a way for you to reach financial freedom. You know, take a right step. If you hate that 9-to-5 job, if you don't like your job, take advantage of this sale, try it out, and I look forward to see you guys tomorrow, both on my Foose TV and chat, banking some cash. Happy 4th of July, guys.
They don't even know that I'm hurting. This life's not easy, and I'm made out of steel. Forget that I'm human, forget that I'm real. Act like you know me.